congratulations, you've made the first absolute step. The first step is deciding you want to become a pilot. But we see this all the time. Where the heck do I even start with flight training? That's what this video is going to answer for you today. If you follow these 5 steps before you even step foot in a plane, it's going to make your training so much easier, and it's going to give you a great start into your aviation training. Let's talk about it. For those of you guys who don't know who I am, my name is Clayton. I'm a current flight instructor with Greenville Aviation here in South Carolina. And I love doing these videos on YouTube to kind of help people along their aviation journey or help them with training and things they might be struggling with, but also sharing along my aviation journey as well. Recently, while talking with one of the people who works at our school who answers our phone, we've been noticing there's a lot of new people who are coming in to do flight training who have no idea where to start. And that's the whole goal of this video. I want to give you guys some tips and recommendation for those of you who want to start flight training. Where do you even start? What do you need to do? And how to get ready for flight training. The first absolute step I want you to take is get your FAA medical. In order to do flight training, you need at least a 3rd class aviation medical. Now, if you just want to get your license for fun and fly around for fun, you can stick with a 3rd class medical. But let's say you want to go to the airlines one day, or maybe you want a career in aviation. Maybe it might be best to also go for your 1st class medical. The 1st class medical is what's required in order to go into a commercial job in aviation. 3rd class is the bare bones in order just to fly private pilot for fun. But if you know you want to go to the airlines one day, it might be wise to go ahead and make sure you qualify for a 1st class medical before you even start flight training. The worst thing you could possibly do, and this just doesn't apply for 1st class, this applies for 3rd class, is to start your training and then do your medical later on to find out you don't qualify. There's something that's a limiting factor, and then you have to jump through hoops with the FAA, or worst case, you just can't get one at all because there's some limiting factor. So my absolute first advice for anyone who wants to start flight training is get your medical done ASAP. If there's any issues, you can get through those hoops with the FAA and get it all handled before you start training. Now, the FAA medical has to be administered by an aviation medical examiner. Now, the FAA has a whole list on their website. I'll link that down below in the description if you need to find one. I would also recommend, and we'll kind of talk about which one of these schools you could talk to later, find a local flight school, reach out to them, and just ask them what AMEs they recommend in your area. Most flight instructors in a specific area have an AME that they like and recommend, so that would be my recommendation. Reach out to a local flight school, find out who they like to use, and go with that aviation medical examiner. The big thing that's gonna probably be a limiting factor for a lot of people, whether you get your medical, is the medication you're on. If you're a healthy person not taking any prescribed medication or anything, then you're probably not gonna have any issues getting your medical. The thing that hurts a lot of people is medication. So again, I'll leave a link for this down in the description below, but check the FAA's list of approved medication. If you're on any of these medication that's not approved, talk to your doctor and see if you can either get off that medication or substitute a medication that is approved by the FAA. That's the #1 thing that limits people in getting a medical. All right, number 2, since you have knocked out your medical, the next thing you need to do is start your ground training. Now you might be asking, what the heck, I haven't even started flying. If you can knock out a lot of ground training before you even step foot in a plane, you're gonna save so much money. Let me explain. There's a lot of procedure material that we need to learn in aviation. If you can take the time and get that learned and understood ahead of time, you don't spend the time in the airplane learning that. You spend the time in the airplane learning how to actually fly. It saves money. It makes your training way more efficient if you understand and know this stuff ahead of time. Part of the training for get your license is passing a written test. Now this written test, as I just mentioned, you can take this before you even set foot in an airplane. And that's what I strongly recommend to my students. There's a lot of great online ground schools available. 2 that come to my mind off the top of my head is Sporty's, that's what I use for my private pilot training, and also Gold Seal. That's another really popular one. There's a bunch of them out there. Pilots Institute, I think, is one. Kings, there's all sorts of different programs. Just Google, do some research, and pick one that you think is gonna best suit you. All of them have the same goal in mind, is to get you to pass your written exam. The written exam is 60 questions, and you just need to make a 70% or better. Now again, you don't have to do this before you start flight training, but doing this ahead of time makes your training in the plane so much more of a better use of time and way more valuable because you learn all these procedures ahead of time and you don't spend the time learning them in the plane. So highly recommend going through one of those ground schools. They have great material to help you study and prepare for the test. Then sign up and go take the written test before you start flight training. Come with that written test already done to your first flight lesson, and you're gonna be good to go. It's gonna put you so much further ahead. Highly recommend for all my students and anyone who's wanting to get their license. All right, step number 3. Now that we've kind of knocked out the precursors out of the way, let's talk about Part 61 versus Part 41. Now you might be asking, what on earth is that? Flight schools in the United States have 2 types, Part 61 and Part 141. And if you just want the quick abbreviation, this is the quick answer for this. Part 61 is a very kind of laid back, schedule-free almost way of getting your license, while Part 141 is basically like regular school, very structured. Let's dive a little more deeper though. I personally work at a Part 61 school, and I love to recommend Part 61 schools to students, but there are the advantages and disadvantages of Part 61 versus Part 141. As I mentioned, Part 61 is a very laid back, very unstructured schedule. It's great for anyone who has a full-time job, maybe you're in school, or just has a very hard schedule to work around. Part 61, if you want to fly 1 time a week, every week, you can do that with your instructor. If you need to fly, or if you want to fly 7 days a week, every single day, you can do that. It's 100% at the discretion of the instructor and the student's availability. There's no set structured schedule to it. Whereas Part 141, it's just like school. You have set class times, you have set flying times. It's a very structured program, follows a very strict syllabus. It's very, how do you say? It's a lot more formal than compared to Part 140 or Part 61, excuse me. Part 61 is designed to be tailored specifically to a student. So if a student, for example, is struggling on their landings, an instructor can work specifically one-on-one and really focus in on that area to help them work on their landings. Whereas 141, as I mentioned, it's a very structured syllabus, kind of designed for everyone. Now, not to say that's bad. There's the pros and cons of 61 versus 141, and it's obviously different and more beneficial for every single person. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. So you need to kind of decide that for yourself. Which environment do you feel you're going to strive in? Do you think you can keep up with the structured syllabus of a Part 141 school that possibly will get you there quicker than a Part 61 school? Or do you like that more tailored one-on-one training of a Part 61 school and you want to work more individually one-on-one with an instructor? Part 61 might be your route. Part 141s have detailed stage checks as you go along through the training. Whereas, like I said, with Part 61, it's kind of at the sole discretion of the instructor. They just have some check boxes they need to meet by the end of the training, but there's not really stage checks along the way unless they choose to do that. It's very much at the discretion of the instructor. Whereas 141, as I said, very structured, checking the boxes as you go. Another thing to mention is Part 141 has slightly lower hour requirements in order to take your test versus 61. So if you're wanting to do it a little quicker, again, Part 141 might be your option. All that to say, do your research on whichever school you choose. A lot of local mom and pop flight schools follow Part 61 regulations, and they might be a better option for you. They also might tend to be a little cheaper for you. Part 141, if you're used to that structured schedule or structured formula and you want that strict way to get to the airlines, 141 might be your option. You need to decide that for yourself, so make sure you do great, excellent research on the school you're looking at. But now that you know the difference between 61 and 141, then now it just comes down to your preference of school. If you know you want a Part 141 school, read some reviews on a local flight school near you that's a Part 141 program, or maybe if you're traveling outside of state to find another school, read the reviews, ask some questions online, and really dig into which school is going to benefit you the best. Don't be afraid to call them up and ask some questions. What's their success rate with their students? Ask what their maintenance is like. All sorts of different things to consider when picking a school. Main thing we wanted to look at here though, 61 versus 141. So now you know. Kind of feeding off on that step number 4, talk about finances. Everyone's, this part that gets them a little scared when talking about flight training. It's no secret, getting your pilot's license is very expensive. Especially nowadays, the price of fuel is pretty high, so the cost of training has skyrocketed. It's taken off. No pun intended there. Part 61 schools tend to be more of a pay-as-you-go style. That's how Greenville Aviation operates. You just pay after every single lesson and pay as you go. If you can only afford to fly 1 or 2 times a week, you can do that. But Part 141 schools tend to have a more set fee. You pay I don't want to say one-time fee, but it's a very set fee and cost as opposed to the pay-as-you-go style of Part 61 schools. While Part 61 schools tend to be a little cheaper if you go to small local mom and pop schools, you also kind of run into harder options of financing. 141 schools typically have more agreements with organizations to provide financing. Sometimes Part 61 schools don't have that availability as much as 141s. So again, do your research. Make sure you research in terms of financing. If you need that, what kind of options do they have available for you? I want to just present to you guys the questions you should ask and the things you consider. But again, a lot of this comes down to your own research. You just got to make some phone calls, talk to some people at these schools, and get some of these questions answered. Because it's totally different depending on where you live and what kind of environment you're looking for to train in. I'm going to throw in a step 4.5. I guess you could kind of wrap this back in with medical, but let's talk about non-US citizens. If you're not a US citizen and you want to train in the United States, it's not impossible. You just got some extra hoops to jump through. The TSA requires that flight schools verify US citizenship when we provide flight training to them. And again, if you're not a US citizen, it's not impossible. You just got some extra hoops to jump through. There's a great article from AOPA that talks about some of the hoops you got to jump through. Again, I'll link it down in the description below. But my recommendation is, if you're not a US citizen, you've made it this far, you picked out your school, contact that school and ask them for some help. They'll help you navigate this and get all your paperwork in line so that you can begin training. Just wanted you guys to be aware, if you are not a US citizen, it's not impossible to train. You just got some extra hoops you got to jump through. And finally, we've reached step number 5, and this is everyone's favorite step. Schedule that first flight. Now, the first flight, most schools call it a discovery flight. It basically gives you a chance to go up in the plane that you'll be training in and get a feel for what it's like to fly in a small plane. Again, not a lot of people have probably flown in a small plane before, so this just gives you a chance to make sure it's something you actually want to do. I have seen this happen where people who are set on becoming pilots, they get up in a small plane and they go, never mind, I don't want to do this no more. So this just gives you a chance to kind of no commitment, get up and experience it for the first time. But also, it does count as training, which is the great part of a discovery flight. It allows you to count those first hours of training, but also just get a fun first time experience up in the plane. Whatever school you decide, do some research, get some questions asked online, join some Facebook groups. There's a great Facebook group called the Student Pilot Community on Facebook. Awesome, great community where people will answer any questions you might have. Look into some schools nearby, look at some schools far and wide, and do that research for whatever school you might do. But once you're ready, call them up and schedule that discovery flight and commit to the training. And that's it. Once you get to this point, you're pretty much ready to continue hardcore into your training. And of course, some schools have different procedures and rules that they like to follow and ways they operate, and they're gonna let you know that and let you know how they operate. But this is kind of, before you start training, these are the check boxes you definitely want to start knocking out. Let me know what you guys think. Is this kind of the route a lot of you guys who already have your license? Anything you'd add to this, or any other advice you'd give to people who are wanting to start flight training? These are the big things I definitely see, but let me know. Anything else you guys would recommend to some future pilots? Leave those comments down below, and let's get them all prepared for getting their pilot's license and getting ready to start their training. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys would love to see some more aviation content, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Do lots of awesome content where we just talk about different news in aviation, different incidents that happen, as well as training videos for people who are training to get their license. Any tips or advice I can do to help you guys excel in their training and get your license as soon as possible. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.